They laughed when she walked on stage, but 3 minutes later, the entire auditorium was sobbing uncontrollably. 17-year-old Maya Rodriguez had never spoken above a whisper in the hallways of Riverside High School. She was a girl who sat in the back corner, the one whose worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floors, the one whose lunch consisted of whatever she could find in the discount bin at the corner store. To her classmates, she was invisible. To the bullies, she was an easy target. But none of them knew what Maya carried inside her heart, or the incredible secret that would soon leave everyone speechless. Maya's story began in a place most American teenagers couldn't even imagine. Born in a refugee camp on the Turkish-Syrian border, she spent her first 12 years listening to bombs fall like thunder in the distance. Her mother, Elena, was a former opera singer whose career had been shattered by war. Her father, Ahmed, had been a university professor before everything they knew disappeared overnight. But here's what made Maya different from every other refugee story you've heard. While other children in the camp played with rocks and sticks, Maya would sit by the chain-link fence, closing her eyes and listening to something magical. Every evening at sunset, an American soldier named Staff Sergeant Jennifer Williams would patrol the perimeter, and she always carried a small radio. The songs that floated to the dusty air became Maya's teachers, her escape, her lifeline to a world beyond the barbed wire. Staff Sergeant Williams noticed a small girl who appeared at the fence every day, always at the same time, always perfectly still, as if she were memorizing something precious. One day, the soldier made a decision that would change Maya's life forever. She walked over the fence and quietly began singing along to the radio. Maya's eyes widened, and then something extraordinary happened. This 12-year-old refugee girl, who had never set foot in America, began singing harmony in perfect English. Williams stopped mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open. The voice coming from this tiny girl was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was pure, haunting, filled with pain and hope and something indefinable that made the hardened soldier's eyes fill with tears. From that day forward, Williams brought different songs, teaching Maya English through music, never imagining that she was training someone who would one day shock the world. 2 years later, through a miracle of paperwork and bureaucracy, Maya's family was selected for resettlement in America. They landed in Portland, Oregon on a gray February morning, carrying nothing but 2 duffel bags and hearts full of terrified hope. Maya's father, once respected and educated, now cleaned office buildings at night. Her mother, whose voice had once graced concert halls, worked double shifts at a laundromat. Maya enrolled at Riverside High School, where she quickly learned that being different in a small Oregon town meant being a target. The bullying started on her first day. Tyler Morrison, the quarterback whose father owned half the town, decided Maya's accent was hilarious. He would follow her down the hallways, mimicking the way she pronounced certain words, gathering crowds of laughing students. Sarah Chun, the popular girl who ruled the social hierarchy, made sure Maya knew she didn't belong by pointedly moving seats whenever Maya sat nearby. Even the teacher seemed uncomfortable with her presence, speaking slower and louder as if volume could bridge the gap between cultures. But the cruelest moment came during Mr. Peterson's English class, when Maya volunteered to read aloud from Shakespeare, confident in her language skills. Tyler interrupted with exaggerated fake applause. Maybe she should go back to refugee school, he announced, causing the entire class to erupt in laughter. Maya felt something break inside her chest, a piece of the confidence her father had spent years building. She stopped speaking in class entirely, becoming the ghost who haunted the back rows. What none of them knew was that every night, Maya would climb onto the fire escape outside their cramped apartment and sing. She sang the songs Staff Sergeant Williams had taught her. She sang lullabies her mother had hummed in the camp. She sang American pop songs she learned from the radio, pouring her homesickness, her anger, her dreams into melodies that floated over the sleeping city. Her voice had grown stronger, richer, more powerful during those years of silence and pain. The announcement about the annual talent show appeared on bulletin boards throughout the school in late April. Maya walked past it dozens of times, each time feeling a flutter of impossible possibility in her chest. She had never performed for anyone except the stars and the empty streets below her apartment. But something was calling her, Something stronger than fear, stronger than the voice that whispered she didn't deserve to take up space on that stage. The night before auditions, Maya's mother found her crying on the fire escape. Elena Rodriguez had lost almost everything to war, but she recognized the sound of a caged bird. She sat beside her daughter and began to tell her a story Maya had never heard before. Before the war, Elena had been offered a scholarship to study in New York, a chance to perform at Lincoln Center. But she had been too afraid, too convinced she wasn't good enough. "I gave up my voice because I was scared," Elena whispered. "Promise me you won't make the same mistake." The next morning, Maya walked into the auditorium where Mr. Rodriguez, the drama teacher, was holding auditions. The few students scattered in the seats looked up with surprise when a quiet refugee girl approached the sign-up sheet. Tyler Morrison was there with his guitar, planning to perform a popular rock song. Sarah Chun had prepared a dance routine. They exchanged glances that said everything about what they thought of Maya's chances. When Maya wrote her name on the list, her hand was shaking so badly she could barely form the letters. Mr. Rodriguez looked at her with kind eyes and asked what she would be performing. "I'll be singing," Maya said quietly. It was the first time she had spoken above a whisper in school since the Shakespeare incident. The day of the talent show, the auditorium was packed with students, parents, and faculty. Maya sat in the wings, watching performer after performer take the stage. Tyler's rock song was competent but forgettable. Sarah's dance routine earned polite applause. When Maya's name was called, she stood on legs that felt like water, smoothed down her mother's borrowed dress, and walked into the spotlights. The reaction was immediate and cruel. She could hear the snickers starting from Tyler's section. Someone whispered loudly enough for her to hear, "This should be interesting." The three judges, including Principal Watson, Mrs. Foster from the music department, and local radio host Dave Martinez, looked at her with polite but skeptical expressions. Maya approached the microphone, and the auditorium fell into a restless quiet. For a moment that felt like eternity, Maya stood frozen. She could see the expectant faces, could feel the weight of their judgment, could hear Tyler's suppressed laughter. Every instinct told her to run, to disappear back into invisibility where she was safe. But then she closed her eyes and heard Staff Sergeant Williams' voice from across the years, and her mother's whispered promise, and something deeper, something that belonged entirely to her. Maya opened her mouth and began to sing. The song she chose was Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, but what came out was nothing anyone expected. Her voice rose like smoke, like prayer, like everything beautiful and broken in the world given sound. She sang about pain and hope, about leaving everything behind and finding something new, about being an outsider who finally discovers she has something precious to offer. The change in the auditorium was instantaneous. The snickering stopped as if someone had flipped a switch. Students who had been scrolling through their phones looked up, their faces reflecting something like awe. Parents leaned forward in their seats. The judges sat transfixed, Dave Martinez removing his sunglasses to wipe his eyes. But Maya was just getting started. As the song progressed, her voice grew stronger, more confident, reaching notes that seemed to touch something divine. She sang about a cold and broken hallelujah, and everyone in that room understood she wasn't just performing. She was sharing her story, her journey from a refugee camp to this moment, her transformation from invisible to unforgettable. When she reached the final verse, her voice soared so high and pure that it seemed to lift everyone in the auditorium with it. Tyler Morrison sat with his mouth open, his cruel laughter replaced by something that looked like shame. Sarah Chun was openly crying, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. Principal Watson had his hand pressed to his chest, as if trying to keep his heart from breaking. The last note hung in the air for what felt like minutes, and then silence. Complete, absolute silence. Maya opened her eyes and saw 600 people staring at her, as if they were seeing her for the first time. Because they were. Then Dave Martinez stood up. He was followed by Mrs. Foster, then Principal Watson, then slowly, like a wave moving through the auditorium, everyone rose to their feet. The applause wasn't polite or dutiful. It was thunderous, overwhelming, the sound of hearts breaking open and being rebuilt. People were cheering, crying, reaching toward the stage as if Maya's voice had touched something they didn't know they were missing. Maya stood at the microphone, tears streaming down her face, finally understanding what her father had meant all those years ago. English wasn't just a bridge to anywhere she wanted to go. Her voice was that bridge, and she had just crossed it in front of everyone who had ever made her feel small. The judges didn't need to deliberate. Dave Martinez stepped to the microphone, his voice thick with emotion. In 20 years of working in music, he said, I have never heard anything like what we just witnessed. Maya Rodriguez didn't just win this talent show. She reminded us what it means to be human. But the real victory came after the show, when Tyler Morrison approached Maya in the hallway. His swagger was gone, replaced by something Maya had never seen from him. Humility. I'm sorry, he said simply. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Sarah Chun was right behind him, tears still fresh on her cheeks. You're incredible, she whispered. I wish I could sing like that. I wish I had your courage. The video of Maya's performance, recorded by a proud parent and uploaded to social media, went viral within hours. By the next morning, it had millions of views and thousands of comments from around the world. Record labels called. Talent agents left voicemails. But Maya was most proud of the message from Staff Sergeant Jennifer Williams, now retired, who had seen the video and remembered the little girl by the fence who had sung harmony in perfect English. You kept your promise, Williams wrote. You built bridges with your voice, just like we knew you would. Maya's life changed overnight, but not in the ways people expected. Yes, there were opportunities, scholarships, and dreams that suddenly seemed possible. But the real transformation was in how she walked through the halls of Riverside High School. Her head was high now, her voice clear and confident. She had learned the most important lesson of all. The very things that make us different, that make us outsiders, are often the things that make us extraordinary. She started a music program for refugee students, teaching them what Staff Sergeant Williams had taught her, that music is a universal language, that every voice matters, and that sometimes the most beautiful songs come from the most broken places. Tyler Morrison was her first volunteer, and Sarah Chun helped organize the fundraisers. Maya's story spread beyond that small Oregon town, inspiring countless other young people who felt invisible, who carried secrets in their hearts, who wondered if they would ever find their place in the world. She became living proof that your past doesn't determine your future, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it, and that sometimes the very experiences that seem to break us are actually preparing us to soar. Years later, when Maya stepped onto the stage at Lincoln Center, fulfilling the dream her mother had once abandoned, she carried with her the voices of everyone who had ever felt like an outsider. She sang for the little girl in the refugee camp who had learned English through a chain-link fence. She sang for every student who had ever been laughed at for being different. She sang for her parents, who had lost everything but given her the world. And in the audience that night, Staff Sergeant Jennifer Williams sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, knowing she had witnessed a miracle years ago by a dusty fence, when a 12-year-old refugee girl had first opened her mouth and revealed the power of the human spirit, transformed pain into beauty, silence into song, and invisibility into light. Maya's voice had always been her bridge to anywhere she wanted to go. But the real journey wasn't about reaching a destination. It was about discovering that home isn't a place you find, but a place you create, one note at a time, one heart at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply open your mouth and let the world hear who you really are. And sometimes that's all it takes to change everything.